Hi everyone, welcome to Speakers TV. I'm really happy to be joined by Ali, who is from the Bradford Modified Cars Club, and incidentally his father, Yunis Alam, who is head of sociology and criminology at the University of Bradford. So Ali, tell us, what's Bradford Modified Cars Club?
Bradford Modified Bradford Modified Club is a car club made up of the community, and that's mainly Bradford. Uh, but a lot of them come from outside of Bradford to join into the community. Now I have like friends coming from Manchester to Derbyshire to from Liverpool, Nottingham, you know, wherever, all around the United Kingdom to come down to this one place to socialise and talk about one thing, which is cars. So I hold car meets every other week, and that is kind of the centre of the topic. That's the centre of attention. That's the main topic is cars. So they all come in together to look at these different pieces of what I like to call art. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's been going on years, and it's gone through different waves. It's gone through like from drag racing down at Santa Pod Raceway to now car meets in Lidl. I've been running Bradford Modified Club for the past 6 to 7 years. It's been very successful, very good. Brings the community together, white, black, brown, whatever. Uh, you know.
Can I ask why cars are so important to you?
Um, I mean, I think it's just a way of expressing our own kind of feelings and emotions on something. I mean, you can find cars that are very like blacked out. Your blacked wheels, your blacked out wheels, your blacked out tints, you blacked out, headlights or whatever, and that kind of shows that this person's maybe kind of very serious about life. Then you can see the funky multicolored cars. That kind of shows that this person actually is very kind of whatever you want to say
Where
that
would you
as.
say you are on the spectrum?
Yeah, I just like to be unique. My cars that I've owned, you're never gonna see another one like it. Might be the same model, but it's not going to be the same wheel color as mine because it's going to be just a one-off kind of thing. So I'm fortunate to have that luxury where I can kind of afford to some extent, modify my car in certain ways to suit me and myself.
Hmm. Okay. So part of the performance is it details some of the experiences that you might have had or the friends of yours that are in this car club. Could you and you talked about this in the language of like stereotypes as well.
Mhm.
What are some of those experiences? Could you share maybe a little bit with us? What are some of those negative experiences that you've had?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, in the car scene, there's a lot of different experiences, from being positive and negative. I mean, some of the negative ones are not always at my car meet. Some of the negative experiences are, just generally on the road. Uh, a lot of them are by, the police. Unfortunately, I kind of do a lot of good talk for the police. I'm always saying, you need to respect the police because, if you're on their side, they're going to be on your side, kind of thing. Respect works both ways. But sometimes the police, just recently, I get stopped every other month, every other week sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Just and I've got a clean license. I don't do anything towards the law kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I don't like breaking the law a lot. I mean, but they pick out anything and everything. As soon as they seen, brown boy, nice car, shiny wheels, music, whatever. Play music. I know the music law better than anyone because I used to be a DJ. So after 10 o'clock, the music needs to be at so many decibels and etc. etc. So and that's another thing I kind of specialize in is like with my car, I've always got to have like a sound system because I like to kind of be heard. I don't like the attention, but I like to be. I like someone to say to me, "Wow, you got a nice sound system," and ask me questions about it because it's a it's a it's a door for conversation. I don't mind that because it's a conversation about cars. So a lot of the negative experiences are from the police. What do you do? How, why, what, where, when, and I'm just like, look, I don't need this. And as soon as I tell them, I work for the council, then it's kind of like calm and it's like, okay, like, yeah, so, I just wanted to let you know that, you indicate a bolt, you didn't indicate at this junction or something. I'm like, really? Like, is that what you kind of stopping me for in a unmarked BMW? But you've obviously got some kind of other suspicion in your kind of mind. I mean, my friends have other kind of views on the police. They kind of, some of them just hate them because of the bad experiences. I'm not like that. I like to be open-minded because I just see it as they're doing a job. Whether they want to pull me for looking like some sort of little drug dealer, fair enough, but I'm going to change their mind about that. Not everyone's like me, though. That's the problem. And generally, it's like, the members of the public, a lot of them are like, there was a TNA article out about, some lad doing some car meet racing on the back of Leeds Road, which kind of absolutely tarnished my kind of hard work. I mean, 6 to 7 years of hard work possibly going down the drain because of one person that was just being irresponsible. Now, I've had conversations with this guy, and he's good, he's a nice guy and everything. I think he just didn't understand the effect he's having on the community and obviously my car club. So anyway, it's just little things, There's one idiot driving up and down, whatever Leeds Road at 70 miles per hour. So that means me in my car that I work hard to get looking shiny and look after it like it's my baby son or something. Do you know what I mean? For then somebody to come to me and say, "Well, you're just like him." Do you know what I mean? I mean, I see it as somebody that's spent a lot of hard time, effort, and money on something. They're not going to abuse it, and I like to. If I'm responsible about anything, I've got to say I'm responsible about, driving my car correctly on the road.
So I wanted to ask you, Yunis, could you maybe tell us a little bit about why you researched car culture, why it was something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I can talk to you about that.
Could you tell us now?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, thanks.
So, I originally started seriously looking at cars as an area of sociological inquiry. So I apologise in advance for being a sociologist, I suppose. And I've been researching in Bradford for a long time, over 2 decades now. And in my earlier pieces of research, which had nothing to do with cars, it became quite rapidly clear that for a lot of the people I was engaging with, and I was doing research on young Pakistani Bradfordian men, British born invariably. This was after the early 2000s, the riots or the disturbances, and there was a lot of noise within academia, within political circles. There was just a lot of conversation about these young men. So they were being talked about, but they weren't really being talked to. So I did a bit of research which tried to talk to them. And through the fieldwork, which was quite long, I did about a year's worth of fieldwork, I think, it became clear that the car, for whatever reason, was important, even if it wasn't spoken about. It was just there, it was present, it was something that was on everybody's vista. And then subsequent to that, I did another piece of research, and again, cars were very, very significant in the lives of people. And then I started doing the research in a much more focused way, particularly about cars. So that was probably 8 or 9 years ago. So I found it fascinating from a sociological point of view in that there was so much going on there. There is so much conflict, there is so much identity work going through there as well. And I also bear in mind that, well, I suppose even before my venture into academia, cars were ubiquitous. There were things that you noticed, even as a child. And, we're arguably living in a less gendered world today, but, cars are toys that were when I was a kid, for boys. So you kind of have all this background noise going on in your head, and then you start to think sociologically about it, and then you start to think about, well, what are the dynamics, what are the tensions, what are the ambiguities that that are alive and well in a place like Bradford. And I think that was the other thing that appealed to me, because it was so meaningful and it was so real world. It was quite an easy job in some ways to sort of apply sociological theory to it. So that's why I started to do the research, because it seemed an obvious thing to do, but probably most importantly, and this is it's not quite a rule, but this is the advice I give to all my students: if you're going to do some research, make sure you enjoy it. So I found it immensely enjoyable in terms of as a learning experience, and something that I could invest in sort of academically as well. It's not that I'm a petrolhead, I'm not really. But there were moments of the fieldwork which made me a bit of a petrolhead. You know, I kind of went native. I became a bit of a car enthusiast at times. So it was very sort of fulfilling and rewarding in a very rounded way. And often that's not the case in academia, where you kind of jump in, do the research, write it up, get paid, and it's done, and then you walk away. And that certainly hasn't been the case with this sort of broader arc of research.
Yeah, and obviously you're still very immersed in it. Immersed in Bradford, I guess.
No, I still am. I'm very, in a slightly different way, not so much as an insider, but I'm quite conscious of the impact that car thinking has. And car thinking is bound up with race thinking, with gender thinking and class thinking, principally. I mean, there are other things going on as well. So, you know, when people talk about the discriminations that they encounter on the road, those are all finessed according to who's driving and what they're driving and where they're driving it. And in some cases, there doesn't need to be anybody driving the thing in the mere presence of a car in a certain neighbourhood evokes suspicion, right? You know, in some parts of the city which are designated as deprived or as underprivileged or suffering from markers of multiple markers of deprivation, so on, you see a 30 or 40 grand car parked on the curb. You know, your imagination clicks into gear. Yeah. It's obvious whose car that is. Yeah. It's either a celebrity, unlikely, very wealthy landlord, possibly. Most likely the quickest shortcut is it's a drug dealer or it's some other dodgy character, right? Yeah. So I'm invested in sort of breaking some of those myths, really. I think there are a lot of myths around cars and young people in particular. That's actually across the board. It's more pronounced when you throw ethnicity into the mix, and when you throw ethnicity, age. Younger people are more likely to be stopped, for example.
And I suppose it's also quite similar to the way that people treat, for example, working class people who have jobs but who are on benefits and buy TVs, for example. You know, we saw it with refugees who are coming in, or why do they have mobile phones? So that it's just constantly going.
Sure. Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are pre-existing biases, right? Yeah. So we're ready. Many people are primed and ready to make that leap, that explanatory leap. So, you know, I think when it comes to racism more generally, you know, it's very difficult to undo 400 or 500 years worth of Western imperialist colonial thought.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's embedded, you know. And it's so embedded, and this is something that people like Frantz Fanon were writing about in the 1950s and 60s. It's so embedded that even if you are black yourself or non-white, you end up traversing or travailing down those racialized discourses. You end up believing that, you know, it's them bloody foreigners, you know. And I've had these conversations with people of Pakistani heritage, talking about Pakis who are really bad. They're the bad ones. I used to get that shit when I was at school. I used to get white kids telling me, you're all right, or they'd say something offensive racially, you know, Pakis this, Pakis that. No offense. Oh, not you. It's them. It's the ones who live on Oak Lane or some shit like this, you know. Sorry. So my point is that is very difficult to undo, and it's going to take generations to undo that. My immediate concern is trying to kind of foster a greater degree of understanding amongst the people who have a greater degree of political control and power. So, you know, I've tried to kind of reach out to law enforcement, to the local authority. I'm having some really interesting conversations with people who work in West Yorkshire Police about this stuff. But previously when I tried, I was just getting doors slammed, because, you know, there is a positionality here. And it's often about class, actually. It's about class practice. So I'm not talking about economic aspects of class. I'm just talking about what people do based on their class position. So, you know, for a lot of people, working with a car is a creative outlet. And it's no different to, I don't know, flower arranging or making pots or whatever else, or going to, you know, in a cliched way, ballet or whatever. But it's still valuable. It's still creative cultural production, right? And unless you're empathetic enough or you're immersed within that culture, you may not even see it. You may not have the propensity to recognize it or validate it as such. So that's one of the bigger kind of philosophical issues, I think, the tensions within this caste stuff.
And I guess one of the things as well that you will have seen in your research and also resonates with you, Ali, as well, is this idea of that there are certain narratives about young Asian working class Muslim men. What would you say, I guess, are the main things that came out of your research and maybe in your experience, Ali, that are those those social narratives that people do hold to about? Because, you know, we've talked about people thinking that, you know, it's a drug dealer's car, and all those kinds of things. What does that look like for young people and people in the car modifying field?
I mean, it's similar to what my father's just talked about, you know, like how, you know, like a few of my friends, you know, they're in like the business in terms of like they're either, you know, 25 to 30 years old, you know, and the solicitors or something or the other, you know, and they're driving, you know, big white X5s with, you know, black wheels and, you know, tinted windows and stuff, but, you know, never sold a drug in his life kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? You know, he's worked hard, and I think that's the thing about a lot of how I personally see it is that, you know, majority of Bradford's, you know, got mainly Pakistani. It's full of, you know, Pakistanis, and, you know, Pakistanis have ventured out into restaurants and businesses, and, you know, they've brought all these ideas and they've formed them into something that's, you know, very successful. And I think a lot of that is it's like, you know, I've also got friends, you know, that are of white of race, and, you know, it's like I see these posts about, you know, the English flag is the only flag I care about, you know, since all this, you know, BLM and Palestinian Lives Matter kind of thing's been going on. You know, I see the other side to people, and a lot of it is like, well, these Pakistanis have come here, they've kind of taken over. That's how they feel. This is how I'm kind of got it in my head, that they're kind of taking over. They're, you know, how are these guys successful? Quad bikes.
The
Music.
irony couldn't be ironier.
I know. Music to my ears, that. I don't mind it.
The only one in here, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, Pakistanis have kind of like taken over, and, you know, how have they become so successful? How are they driving 40 to 50 grand cars, and how are we just plodding along in our, you know, whatever financed cars or whatever? I don't. Just so I think straight away, you know, that's a big problem. Do you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of these people with, you know, the nice 10, 20, 30 grand, 40 grand cars, you know, come down to my car meets, and a lot of it is like that. You know, you see, you know, you just see it in plain sight. You know, it's don't even need to be talked about. You just see the look on somebody's face when, you know, somebody rolls through in a C63. You know, it's like.
I think it's worth. Sorry to interrupt you. I think it's worth mentioning that, look, you know, I'm under no illusions that there are drug dealers. Most cities have drug dealers. That's just a fact of life. I think one of the problems is that there appears to be a disproportionate belief. There appears to be a belief that there is a disproportionate number of Pakistani heritage in Bradford, for example, drug dealers. And the proof of that is the expensive car, the visibility, the hyper visibility of the expensive looking car. But what isn't borne in mind, and this is the beauty, if you like, or the ugliness of stereotypes, because they are so good at giving you shortcuts. So rather than doing the complicated thing and the thoughtful thing of thinking things through, you see the car and you make the leap drug dealer, right? Against that context is the very fact that, first of all, in Bradford, and it's, the mechanics and the processes are the same in any multi-ethnic city, I would say. It's just the details are different. So in Bradford, the biggest ethnic minority in terms of numbers is Pakistani heritage, right? But this is now 3-4 generations deep, established. You and I are talking in a sort of Bradfordian Yorkshire accent or whatever. We're kind of comfortable in our skins as hybrid entities and all that, right? And at a certain point in time, we've started to take off, culturally, economically, even in terms of confidence. So amongst Pakistanis and amongst most BME heritage communities, you will find that there's a higher level of entrepreneurship. That in itself is not arbitrary, it's not neutral, it doesn't happen for no reason. That happens for a reason. One of the reasons is because you're excluded from the work, from employment or from adequate levels of progression and so on, and it happens across all sectors. So you have a disproportionality of enterprise and you have a disproportionality in terms of hard work, and here I'm talking about legitimate work rather than the graft or dealing drugs, and therefore people are able to afford expensive cars. Add to that second, third, fourth generation Pakistani heritage people who've been born and brought up here, they don't have the same relationship with their mother country or with Pakistan or the home country as their parents might have done or their forebears might have done. So they've got much more disposable income. When I was growing up, I didn't send money to Pakistan. I had nobody in Pakistan, but my folks did. And, who's he going to send money to? So my point is there's much more disposable income. That leads to much more conspicuous levels of consumption. It's much more outward. Across the board, it's not just cars. If you look at people's homes, if you look at what people are wearing, people are Botoxing their lips, they're going on holiday. My parents never went on holiday, So all these economic opportunities now can be fulfilled. So in many respects, we've become, I guess, very interesting hybrids in terms of our cultures, our faith, our position in the infrastructure within society. And I think one of the interesting things about the car stuff is many of the people that I talked to in the research, whether they were young or old, they knew all this shit. They knew all the stuff. They knew that they would get hassle for driving a particular type of car. They knew they'd get hassle from their own kind, meaning family. They knew they'd potentially become more hyper-visible in the eyes of the law. But they were still confident enough to say, I work hard, I earn well, I'm going to buy the car that I want to buy. I don't care of the risks that come with that. And I think that shows and demonstrates a different type of integration. It's not the type of integration that people like Cantle and Ousley and all those were talking about back in the early 2000s, because really they were talking about Muslims who were segregated and insulated. And I think remains a huge amount of discomfort around Islam and Muslims. It's not about integration. It's about identity and it's about your worldview to an extent, which isn't necessarily at odds with whatever Britishness connotes. And of course, Britishness is one of the most woolliest things that you can think of, right? You can't put that in a box. You can't define it. If you ask 3 different people what Britishness means, you'll get 5 different answers. So all this complexity around identity, I mean, for me, I'm kind of like made up about it because it means I get to write about it and read about it or think about it and talk to people about it, right? So it's very rich. I'm in a fortunate position to be able to to be able to exploit all this stuff. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they have to live with it. They have to live with the dynamics that are espoused on the basis of their identity and their preferences, their modes of consumption. So for me, it's kind of a mixed bag. Personally, I find it very rewarding professionally, but I know it becomes yet another means through which people can face bias, prejudice, discrimination, and so on.
Was there a difference in the way that maybe the younger people that you spoke to as part of your research, was there a difference in their attitudes compared to those who are slightly older?
In some cases, yeah. So some of the older people, I mean, it was a very sort of random and opportunistic sample I created. I talked to a lot of people over, The research that went in the book took about 10 years, 9 years, 12, yeah. And I'm still kind of doing it, but in a much more sort of informal and opportunistic basis still. So some of the anomalies were very interesting, and they were based on class, they weren't based on ethnicity. So I was talking to younger guys, and there were one or two younger lads who were really into their cars, modifying them up. And they were talking about all the crap they had to deal with, even in their neighbourhood, even from their dads, you know, about being loud in the neighbourhood, but also about being pulled in the neighbourhood, all that kind of stuff. But what defeated all that was their appreciation of the endeavour. And that was an endeavour of becoming. Their car was in a constant state of flux, of becoming what they thought it could be. Now, if you think about that, that's a pretty remarkable thing that has no credit whatsoever, because that is about creative vision. You're seeing something, and it's the same thing as 1,000 other things that rolled off the production line absolutely identically, right? In the hands of these creative entities, they become something else, whether it's a bigger exhaust or a different colour job or, you know, any number of enhancements. There is this tendency, there is a belief that they're going to inscribe their own identity on it through some kind of creative activity, right? So you've got that going on. And for me, this is amazing. This is working class creative culture. And I think the biggest shame of it is that it's not even recognized as that. It is either negative culture or it is no culture, and it is stigmatized culture. And who's doing the stigmatizing? So if you think about class as a structure, not in merely economic terms, it's the people who are privileged enough to do that. So when I talk to middle-class Pakistanis, they wouldn't do that. That wasn't their cultural practice. Their cultural practice would be buy a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old BMW 5 Series, which needs no adulteration. It needs no modification because it's quick enough, it's big enough, it's pretty enough, or whatever. It's got alloy wheels, it does everything they want it to do. Their life is rewarding as it is because they might have other creative outlets as well, right? I would argue that's because of their class positionality. They're also in that sense, in a hierarchical sense, privileged enough to be able to cast aspersions on the identity of these younger guys. Not always younger guys. Some of them were sort of my age who were really into modding their cars up. But that is frowned upon. That is met with disgust. You know who you are through knowing what you're not. And that Vauxhall Nova piece of shit with all the stupid trappings on it is not me. So I was getting quite a bit of that. People were saying it's tacky, it's crass, it's horrible. And I was amazed by this. And there was one guy I was talking to, was a teacher. And he was talking about all the kids that he was teaching. And he was talking about, they're all into this, and they come in with their kind of tracksuits and they've got their tram lines and they aspire towards these cars and they do paintings of them or whatever. And he says, it's just horrible, it's tacky, it's tasteless, right? So that, part of my focus in the book on cars was about taste. What do we mean by taste? So it's very, in a sense, not entirely, not universally. I'm a sociologist. I'm not generalizing, but by and large, there was a bit of a split between that kind of working class practice and a kind of more elite middle class appreciation of the thing.
I guess for most of us, one of the places where we see these kinds of car meets and collections of cars is weddings. South Asian weddings are huge. So what is it like? Do you get requests? Do you hire cars out? Like, what's the deal?
I've never hired a car really. I've maybe borrowed a car off a friend or something.
That's the thing as well.
That's a big thing. That's just
for the wedding.
I think that's more
Those
like a cultural
though,
thing. That's a cultural thing. I mean, you never see that on a white person's wedding. Do you know what I mean? That's a cultural thing. That's like my son's getting married. It's usually when the son's getting married. The son's side. That's it. It's a happiness.
My brother-in-law brought a fleet of cars when he got married to my sister, and it was the first time I'd seen something like that. It was incredible.
Cringe?
Not cringe. I think my concern was like, but you're stopping other cars on the road, so what's going to happen? It's like that. But then once I got over that, I was like, they look great and they're fab. So and it was just like obviously making loads of noise, and it was a happy occasion. Like why would you not express it in whichever way you want to?
I think that's what it is, and I think They just go way out of the way to kind of impress people. I think it's that for hiring cars is more of an impressing thing. I think it's more to tell everyone that I'm getting married, it's my big day, my happiness, so I'm going to show everyone that I'm kind of happy, which is not always the best thing to do.
Well, there's a bit of one-upmanship as well, isn't there? I mean, there's a bit of people pushing the boat out further and further, and then sometimes people go retro with like a horse and carriage. Camels and stuff, cows, maybe if they're from back home.
No. I've never seen a cow in Bradford.
You don't go to much weddings.
The bride comes on a cart pulled by a great big ox or something. That's the next big thing.
Yeah, it might be. We might have discovered
Copyright
the next.
that.
We definitely will. We definitely will. So I guess taking it back to Peaceophobia, what is this this going to do to challenge some of those negative stereotypes, those negative associations, and the experiences that young people will be having with the police, with other people, with other people in their community?
So I'm personally hoping that it will kind of help people understand why we do what we do, because like I was just talking about this policewoman, at my car meet, she kind of got a bit interested. She started going around and talking to everyone, and she was talking to me first, and she was like, "Can I have your details and stuff?" and blah blah blah. Then she was like, "Why?" She was looking at the cars and she was like, there was a 50 grand Ford Escort Cosworth there, and she was like, "What is this?" Like, and the owner's about 50-year-old, and he stood there and he's like, "You talking about my car? I've got a lot of money in this car. You're talking like it's a garbage bin or something." Do you know what I mean? She's like, "Oh, I don't understand. What is the need of this? Why are you getting together to take pictures of your cars? Like, get a life." Literally, that was her attitude, and she was like, "It's really sad that you're having to do this. You parked in the car park taking pictures, and whatever, that's your opinion. But if I was like your normal young boy, I would be like, who do you think you're talking to? I would have got really offended. But I kind of tackled that. Words weren't doing her justice, because she was like, I'm giving you half an hour. You need to disperse. And I was like, look, cool. Half an hour, 45 minutes will be gone. I don't want to go all at once and blah blah blah. But then I was like, look, we're all here, we're all friendly. There's kids, there's animals, there's dogs. We're here. We're enjoying ourselves. We're not doing anything like erratic or irresponsible. And she's like, nah, like that. I'm doing a job here, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, so you think my car's just a car? I said, so what's your hobby? And she's like, cycling. I said, so you have a nice bicycle, right? If you go cycling, long journeys and stuff, you've got to have a lot of fairly decent amount of money in your bicycle, with 2 wheels and a chain or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I started being a bit kind of shitty with her, like, well, what's your hobby and why and who and why do you do that? Do you know what I mean? And then she started sniggering and laughing. She was like, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. And then it was like case closed. And then I said, look, we're just here to have a good time. Well, now I'm going to go down there and see what these guys have got to say about it. Now I'm going to go put my finger in their business, and the guys down there weren't as friendly as me, but see what they this is what I mean about the police. I can try help them, but it's like, why are you sticking your fingers where they don't belong? You're gonna get a reaction that you obviously want, but I just don't understand where you're trying to go with this, because either we just do stupid things and the crap carries on in Bradford, or we try making a change. Now I'm trying to make a change. Now is all I needed. So I even said to her, I said, park up in a corner. I said, anybody that messes about or thinks is breaking the law, take the number plate down, do them, give them a fine. So because at least they're doing it here in front of you and not out on the street and about to kill someone. That was my kind of thing. So I'm hoping that it'll kind of portray basically what I'm just saying in this interview, that it needs to stop the stereotyping, because it's just going to carry on. I don't think it's going to be anything that dies. I mean, the population's only kind of going higher. I mean,
so I guess my final question would be, how do we use Peaceophobia and performances which really kind of show the authenticity of these experiences that you have, but also like the entirety of what it is, what is car modifying, what it means to you as a young person, how you kind of like construct your identity around it. And then there's someone who, like the police, for example, will come to you and not understand it at all, and rubbish it and kind of like try to stop it from happening. How do you kind of challenge that?
there just needs to be like a sense of understanding from the community, from the police, from just the general public as well. And I think all of us together. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, when I do a car meet, I mean, there's hundreds of people. I mean, you just type it into YouTube, Bradford Modified Club, and you can just see the events that I put on. They're just amazing. They're brilliant in every kind of aspect. They're colourful. You'll see everyone in terms of different races, different genders, and yeah, I mean, it's like one big family, really. I think Peaceophobia is a starting point. I mean, it's already been in like the Telegraph and Argus, a really good article on, obviously the play and what we're trying to achieve. And I think a lot of what we can do is on with the media, play it on our side kind of thing, get it pushed out there, because police officers are going to read, they're going to look, they're going to watch, what's kind of going on and what we kind of achieve. I mean, I play it by kind of ear. When I get approached or whatever, I'm like, car culture is freedom. My driving license is my passport to freedom. I can travel up and down the country if I wanted to tomorrow, with no questions asked. In my car, that's me, that I've modified. That's the colour that I like. The interior. It's the interior that I've put in with my own hands.
Yunis, was there anything you wanted to add onto that in terms of challenging? How can we?
I mean, I think that's one of the features of any type of art. It's not merely, in a sense, a representation. It ought to provoke. It ought to unsettle our complacent minds, which they are often. And I think if you can square the circle whereby you manage to produce compelling art that makes people think, I think that's hopefully an opportunity to instigate change, to transform things, because the premise that we're all working on is that the way things aren't as ideal as they could be or should be. So for me, art has always been a political endeavour, whether it's actually, when I talk about literature, I'm talking about whether it's academic or, creative literary fiction or anything like that. The effective art is that which, whether it's successful or not, but aims to have something that is in need of repair or remedy. So the trick then becomes the skill of the writers, the actors, the producers. You can have the best, the most effective, the most inspiring piece of art, but if nobody's there to watch it or consume it, then you're kind of knackered as well. And I think in this context, I'd be hoping that it reaches deep and wide. And what I mean by that is, it's a Bradford-based piece of work, so you've got a kind of captive audience in a way, but also you may find it more impact-rich if you can get on board with some of the key institutions and stakeholders in the city, such as people who work in law enforcement, people who work in local government, education, whatever. My view is, if you can get those people to encounter this stuff, it doesn't matter if they agree with it or not, but they need to encounter it, because many of us, all we get is it's a singular narrative. We don't get the multidimensionality of it. So in order to hopefully promote the work, you can kind of also promote the politics.
Thank you very much to both of you. That was a fantastic interview.